All right, so this is going to be the final installment, and then this whole chapter of my life will just be put to rest at least for now, I guess. And I can move on to, I'm going to kind of take a little bit of time-ish, like off, quote unquote, and do finish up some creative projects that have been in the works and get started with B Movie Battle Royale, get my money together. Like I said, I rejoined my gym, and now I've got to make sure that I have the money for to pay the dues on the 17th. So I'm gonna have to like start focusing on getting the money together instead, and just play some games, watch some TV, finish up some of my stuff, and I'm hoping to start Wraithline like the Monday, I like the Memorial Day week, so like the Tuesday after the Memorial Day weekend, maybe. But this is chapter 11, getting up that hill, which is so fun. Like chapter 11, like bankruptcy 11 is my lucky number. Like it all just kind of like folds in. And so I think maybe I can just read through this to finalize everything and get it all finished up. So getting up that hill. And I think it like I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because in this moment, like I'm in like a internetless vortex here on the side of the building, so I can't look it up. But I think that this predates the Kate Bush song becoming repopularized by Stranger Things, and so now I'm kind of curious about that as well, just because, just as a trivia curiosity. But anyway, so this is getting up that hill. I started writing this book 4 years ago while I was still living with him. I left the job at the grocery store, yes, that one, Thanksgiving Day 2017, and by August 2018, I took up journaling as a way to cope with the situation. About 9 months of living with him 24/7 was all it took to push me over the edge. Now, granted, the situation wasn't ideal to begin with. We were sharing a studio apartment that was probably less than 500 square feet. Both of our beds and workspaces, readers and desks, were in the same room, which was also the kitchen. We may as well have been in jail together. That's certainly what it felt like to me. It was probably comparable to like a two roommate, like a dorm suite in college, right? Cute little kitchenette, private bathroom, but it's the beds and desks or what is all just in one big shared area, right? In college, Psych 101 required students to participate in at least three studies run by the upperclassmen and graduate students. One of the studies that I participated in was a longitudinal study that started with an emotional evaluation, followed by three 10-minute writing sessions spaced about 6 weeks apart, and concluded with another emotional evaluation. The goal of the study was to show that writing things down was just as good as talking to a therapist. Sometimes you just need to let it out. So I took what I learned from that study and applied it to the anxiety and depression I was suffering from while chained up in his tower. Eventually, the journaling evolved into this project. I have hundreds of pages of journals documenting my day-to-day life living with him that I plan to develop into a storytime video series. That's like traffic. I did that already. This book started from the spark of the idea that became my hypothesis about NPD. It just struck me. It just struck me like a bolt from the blue one afternoon. I remember it being a lot like the scene in Clueless when Cher realizes that she loves Josh. I was standing in the middle of the living room, probably sweeping, when I suddenly realized that he's not a needy, greedy attention whore constantly clamoring for the spotlight. He thoroughly believed he already had it, right? So if he was never trying to get my attention, he thought I was waiting with bated breath for the next thing he was going to say to me. Why would someone think that others were this engrossed in them? I asked myself. I mustered all of the method acting I also learned in college and pretended to be him, stepping through our most annoying conversations to ascertain what may have been motivating him. Yeah, I know. Stop it. She was dumb for thinking someone else needed to do that to make decisions for her. This is super different. I landed on the idea that he must think that his opinions are facts. I started playing, like, even when they're clearly something in the realm of opinion, by the way, right? Like, not just like, like if you don't know something, you can have you can form a hypothesis or make an educated guess. Like, I mean, literally, he thinks his opinions are correct. Right. He thinks his opinions are facts. I started playing around with the idea as I continued to read my journal entries. It fit. Not in the sense that people are committed to their ideals, like religion, politics, and aesthetics. It was much stronger than that. He thought he was right about literally everything. Excuse me. There was no such thing as preference. I mean, the man got upset if I wanted a chicken pot pie instead of a beef pot pie, just like him. He behaved as though he was personally invested in things that had no bearing on himself whatsoever. I started digging. Personal blogs, Psychology Today, YouTube channels, both by professionals and people like myself, and of course, the diagnostic criteria. I formulated my hypothesis and started writing. I explained the diagnostic criteria in light of my hypothesis and then supported my theory with anecdotal evidence based on my experiences living with him. Obviously, you've read the book at this point, right? That's when a funny thing happened. I was consistently reminded of experiences that I had had with her as well. I started making note of them, and it wasn't long before I realized that I could also make an example of her as well, for each and every criterion. I started making predictions based on my hypothesis. There were times that I was actively setting him up while taking note of what was happening in real time in my journal. There were times that I was typing what he was saying to me as he stood 3 feet away, talking to me while watching me type. Like if you listen to and watch light traffic, you'll see that. Some of my predictions were general and researchable. That's how I found many of the resources that I used in this book, like the Quora question that led me to the concept of Sonder. I put my hypothesis to the test. Armed with my budding knowledge, I used my secret weapon to disarm and redirect him when things started going sideways. I started telling him in plain language that what he was saying or doing wasn't on the right track. An easy example of this was his dedication to using the right condiment on food. I finally told him flat out that it's a personal preference and he can put anything he wants on his own food if he thinks it will taste good. There's no one way people are supposed to eat a dish. Put grape jelly on your cheeseburger if you want to. Who's going to stop you? Now that is fucking funny because I just mentioned the YouTube channel that I have been watching with the husband that asked the wife to make food, right? One of the videos he asked her to make the really messy cheeseburgers for dinner. This woman, this genius, and everybody in the comments too was like, dude, I'm intrigued by this. I'm not even gonna lie. It might sound kind of gross, but I bet it slaps. She made peanut butter and jelly cheeseburgers. So like all the the season the beef, make like a smash burger, whatever, however you make your cheeseburgers. But instead of using like ketchup, mustard, pickles, and onion, just use peanut butter and jelly instead as the condiments on it. And I'm like, dude, I bet that's amazing. So that's really funny that this is literally here in right? Put grape jelly on your cheeseburger if you want to. Who's going to stop you? This seemed to open his mind a little bit. The damage was already done. I never had any interest in being associated with him in the first place, but this allowed me to be more assertive about my displeasure in the days leading up to my departure. After I moved out, it took over a year to be comfortable enough rehashing the situation to finish the book. Like I had to take a break. I had to get over it and reacclimate to him not being around. Like I just didn't want to deal with it. So it was about June of 2022, and it was March of 2021 when I moved out. June of 2022 by the time I finished and officially published the book. And now it's May of 2025 that I'm finally getting around to recording and talking about it. So if you think that it's like, yeah, these experiences are not necessarily fresh in my mind, right? That the experience is so robust, right? So like when I say I don't know if I could ever really explain in enough detail how I have arrived at the idea of the Twilight Zone cinema, casino, fight club, whatever, right? But it's the experiences are robust enough that it's very much kind of a part of who I am in order to have dealt with these experiences. And I can see people say, like, well, but if that's true and these people were just a part of that, then they're really not that disconnected from reality. Au contraire, mon frere. Because remember when I said, though, that it's like my reality being the one that's the person that this bullshit is revolving around, my reality existing in darkness while all of this shit was going on is the reality that matters. They were living in a fantasy land. They're fucking nuts. And they're assholes. Like I don't care what anybody says, right? If that shit's true, I cannot stand these motherfuckers regardless. I tried to finish it right off the bat, but it just led to crippling rumination and continued destructive fantasies. I wanted to ruin his life. To be perfectly honest, I had hoped that my departure would just kill him so that I wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. But what happened instead? The opposite. The love bombing phase. He and the hoovering. He emailed me several times, desperately trying to make contact with me while insisting that he wasn't mad at me and that if I wanted to come back, he would welcome me with open arms. He tried calling. He tried Facebook friend requests and Messenger. He tried emailing on holidays. After he wouldn't stop harassing my friend at work, yes, at the grocery store, even resorting to giving her a handwritten letter to give me that reiterated what he had said in all of his emails, he never could take a hint. I had to reply to him to tell him to stop contacting me. Literally. I said all I needed to say in my resignation letter. Stop contacting me. He went into a narcissistic rage. I continued to ignore him. He tried calling at least one more time, and I know this was September, it was like around Labor Day that he seemingly butt dialed me or something like that. But we're talking a whole 6 months after I left. He was still trying to get me to talk to him, which is weird, right? Because remember how I was saying that, like, if I'm right about the Twilight Zone Casino Fight Club, and or like if I'm in the dark, that's the only reason that I need a handler, right? The only reason I need a guide dog or a seeing eye dog is because I'm blind. But the thing is like at the end of the day, though, like I'm not blind. I'm just in the dark to whatever the fuck they were participating in, which apparently, like for all intents, like from what I can gather, was maybe more akin to sending the husband to boil water while the wife is in labor, right? It's just something. It's just getting them out of the way. And they're so self-important that they think the game that they're running is the important mission. And it's just, no, that was just some dumb shit we set you up to do so that you would quit, like, messing things up, right? Because like I said, it's like if they think that they're me, right, they had to just give them something that they thought was the big mission, right? So like I said, like if the actual mission or the op was putting someone in deep cover of homelessness in order to talk about what it's really like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, um, they didn't understand that. And so they were able to be led down any path that made them the center focus of the attention of what they then perceived to be the odd. Right? So it's like if they're like, oh yeah, this is just this game that we're playing online, this Twilight Zone Casino Fight Club where I'm the ring girl and he's the blackjack dealer, and this is really important, and everybody's making so much money and having so much fun, and yada yada yada, and it's like y'all ain't doing jack shit. There isn't anything going on in whatever it is that they're doing other than them diddling themselves. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. Because, like I said, for some reason, they all seem to think that they needed to be giving me a hard time about it. Right? It's a little. I mean, maybe they just thought that I was still like jockeying for a position or something. And I'm like, I don't even know this thing exists. Like, if somebody, like, if you owned a restaurant or a place of business that you, like, someone could be begging you for a job and there just aren't any jobs available. Like, we're not hiring, we're not hiring, we're not hiring. We don't need any more people. We don't need any more people. Quit begging. But like, this person actually doesn't even know that you exist, and every time they're talking to you, you're just imagining that they're begging you for a job. It's crazy, right? I still like I like my example about like the remaking the movie Clue and the whole like harassing Zendaya about not being the person who's playing the role she's definitely playing, right? And how like at some point it ceases to just be irritating shit that someone's doing and actually becomes harassment. I've thought about too before, like back in the day, like people used to say things like you can't rape your spouse, right? And then eventually, like laws have been passed about like marital rape and stuff like that, where it's like you can't socially harass the person you're living with, right? Like when I'm leaving my room to walk to the bathroom, I'm fair game for her to attack with weird questions or trying to insist that I take a break and sit down with her on the couch to look at her pictures on Facebook. And it's like that all of that she was trying to get me to do was just harassing me. Um, and it doesn't matter what she thought she was doing or not. Like, I need to pee. Like, you need to shut up and quit trying to show me your Facebook. Like, I don't care. And I don't know what the point was in it anyway. I don't know what she was thinking I'd be able to get out of it. So it was wasting my time and being a jackass and just harassing your roommate into a social situation that doesn't benefit them a single iota. So he tried calling at least one more time, and I know that he still uses my old phone number for the member discounts at the grocery store. Yes, that's one. It's a running joke now. Deal with it. We are intimated. I still can't shop there, even though I only moved 4 blocks away. I eventually started going. I've been there so I don't even give a shit. When I was driving Uber at one point, I had to drive past the building to pick somebody up, and he was outside with the guys working on the lawn, and so it's like I've seen him. He is thriving. Like, his life has not changed. Right. Oh man, it must have been so devastating. But anyway, it doesn't matter though. I'm a business owner who is fully self-employed. I make 6 figures, drive a Lexus, and shop almost exclusively at Whole Foods. What a difference a year makes. Fuck him and fuck her too. Fuck me. Right. Now, granted, Rachel, we're going to have to talk about the story of how that whole life fell apart. But yeah, for 3 years, I drove a Lexus. I was driving Uber. I was making like $7,000 a month. And like, well, net $7,000 a month and whatever until everything kind of spiraled down the fucking rabbit hole again. But it's okay because now when I look at it, I was even just thinking about this morning. Even as tough as it can get out here, all I have to do is stop and ask myself if I would rather be driving Uber and going home to that tiny roach infested piece of shit apartment with no kitchen. And I'm just like, nope. Nope. It's in a weird way. Like, I'm better off now than I was putting up with that shit. And that, I think, is a good place to stop because it's like that's going to be kind of the point of Wraithline is, in a weird way, like kind of becoming a poverty influencer and just showing like, I cut out a lot of bullshit. I don't need to make $7,000 a month just giving. I'm telling you, man, the big lifted Yodas with the systems will always be driving by, bumping these like female R&B hits. All right. Anyway, that realistically, all I did was stop. There was a point in philosophy class where we were talking about, I think it was an ancient philosophy. We were talking about this concept of like eudaimonia and being like fully actual, self-actualization. This. And it was like the question where it's like, if you got a job that you needed a car to get to or to do the job, but the money that you make from the job just gets put back into owning the car. So it's like you need a car to drive to the job. In order to pay for the car, you need the job. The job only pays for the car. What should you do? That in that situation, what should you do? And it's like pretty obvious, right? So you should quit the job and get rid of the car and just sit your ass at home and quit wasting your time chasing your tail on this bullshit. And that's kind of essentially what ended up happening. Because it's like this unit is, and like I said, I'll get into like more details when I start talking about it. But this apartment is shit. It's overpriced. It's shit. It doesn't even have a kitchen. These people are screwing you over about getting your assigned parking, even though you drive your car for a living. The car is being ran into the ground driving this. You don't actually make enough money to pay all of your bills and keep your car in decent enough repair, to be doing this for a very long period of time. Like, that whole situation always did kind of have an expiration date, right? But then when it just occurs to you that it's like, but if I am making, if I'm making $7,000 a month to pay $6,000 in bills and then have to pay my taxes, but it's like I don't have anything to show for it. what's the point in doing it? You know, it's all just doing these things to keep up with this appearance of the way that people want their life to look like. But the thing is like at the end of the day, when you're renting an apartment and enriching someone else in a lot of ways, instead of yourself owning a home, like we've gotten to a point now where things have devolved to where for all intents and purposes, it may not make sense for people to even continue participating in society in America the way that it's been structured, right? It doesn't make sense to work 40 hours a week to pay most of that money to somebody else in the form of rent and on all these other bills and not be able to um, do anything, right? No one can afford to go to a concert or even like go bowling on the weekend. Like people can't do anything anymore. So what's the point in doing any of it? Because it just cancels itself out. If you can just quit your job and move out of your apartment and live outside and do what you want to be doing instead of being stressed out, like driving around in traffic and all that jazz, what is the point in what's the point in participating in it anymore? So, like I said, on that note, right, that it's like even with these people and all this, that it's like there's no reason, right, to go round with people like this. They don't offer anything. It's one thing to be superficial and or whatnot and like only want to have be friends with people who can do something for you or who have the money to like do things with or whatever and be on your level, so to speak. And it's another thing to be friends with people who literally don't bring anything to the table but fishing for compliments and giving you unsolicited advice. Right? These people aren't worth anyone's time. And that's another topic that'll end up coming up in Raceline when I'm kind of discussing the sorts of people that you run into out here on the street between like drug addicts and chronically, mentally ill and stuff like that, that it's a hard conversation to have. So, like I said, I'll save it for Raceline and cut this off here and consider this a case closed situation. I may not, for the time being, probably am not going to republish the book as a second edition. I think maybe it can just kind of like live on out there. The 5 copies that I bought of it are the 5 copies that are flipping across the universe in one way or another. And lost to time. I had 2 friends that wanted a copy, and I sent them copies. I had 3 copies for myself, then left. When I left the apartment, I took one with me, and then as I had to scale back everything, I ended up leaving it in. I ended up leaving it somewhere with some of my stuff, as I had to do a belongings purge to scale down my life. So there is 1 copy that probably just ended up in the trash. I don't know, but yeah, so we'll see. This may be a book where there's only 2 surviving copies ever. And I mean, I guess like anybody could go online on Amazon and order one if you wanted to, but I would have to tell you what it is. Heck. All right. So on that note, I think that's it. Bye.